Hey guys, and welcome to the weekly docket. Let's start in Wisconsin with Darrell Brooks, who was due to start his Summer of Loathing this week with a final pretrial conference for the cases involving Erica Patterson, including, among a wide variety of charges, battery and intimidation. Remember, he has these cases before a female judge, and then next month, he was set to have a final pretrial conference for his cases involving shooting at people in front of a male judge. So for the Erica cases, the dates have been moved out at the request of his defense team, basically a month. So now the final pretrial conference is July 21st, and the trial slated for August 14th. That puts his shooting case now first, where it was second. The final pretrial conference for that is June 5th and the trial July 10th. And in order to produce him for the pretrial conference has been entered. Will his defense team seek to move this out? We'll see. Right now, he remains represented by attorneys in these cases. He had made noises about representing himself, but he stopped that a while back. Could he come back on it? Yeah, sure he could. We'll just have to see. Let's go out to Idaho and check back in on Bryan Kohberger because the flurry of activity that's been going on for the last week continued. So let's see what's happening. As is typical in this case so far, a lot of the hype on social media is just uninformed garbage. So far, the defense attorney is not some charlatan who's bilking the taxpayers, and the DA is not totally crooked, fabricating evidence, and the judge isn't on the take somewhere. Just settle it down. Just settle it down. Let's start with the gag order. The case is now moved from the magistrate judge to the regular judge, whose name is Judge. That's right, Judge. Judge discussed hearing the gag order arguments and declined to split the situation into two parts, one with the victim's family attorney and the other being the media's motion, saying reasonably he just wants to do it all at once. So if there is a change, it's not piecemeal, changing the order over and over, just do it once. It's reasonable. Now, my view has been that a judge considering the motions to vacate or modify the gag order is going to modify it. There won't be no gag order, and there won't be one that does not consider the First Amendment rights of the people in the press. Let's see what I said the last couple of times I talked about it. As I've said a couple of times, there's not going to be no gag order in the Kohberger case. The media may get it modified. I can see. Having said that, the media does have an argument about the factual record development to support this order, because it has to be shown as necessary, and perhaps the scope and the clarity of the order as well. That's why I think when the smoke settles in June or whenever, this order gets modified. I said, well, the judge has weighed in on it now. Let's see what he thinks he's going to do.
It's likely that there's going to be some adjustments, you might say, or clarifying in the order.
And so there you go, straight from Judge. Score one for the weekly docket. The motions will be heard June 9th. The actual jury trial is scheduled for October, but we'll see on that. Did you know sometimes things get delayed in the justice system? It does happen. The court will consider the discovery disputes later in June. Most of that will be resolved, but there are probably a few things that the judge will have to decide. And that was covered in the last video. And there are new requests by the defense team to access certain grand jury materials. There's nothing wrong or, oh my God, with the parties having a disagreement on certain discovery items and the judge making the call. I can't tell you how many discovery motions I've been involved in, and I hate discovery motions. Speaking of that, the state has filed its own discovery request, including requesting notice of any alibi that Kohberger may seek to put forward. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Let's go down to Florida and check in on the Gabby Petito case, or at least the case her parents have filed against the parents of Brian Laundrie, who murdered Gabby. It's a civil case. So my wife and some friends just happened to be in Moab not long after Gabby and Brian were there. You see these pictures here. And when we were headed back to North Carolina, he went on the run and then later was rumored to be in many places, but bizarrely, one of those was here in Cary next to Raleigh, just a few miles down the road from here. So the case was interesting anyway, because we were hoping they would find her, but it didn't look good. And then, of course, she was found murdered. So I had an eye on it from kind of the beginning just because of the circumstances. I did a video on it a while back, this civil case I'm talking about, and how, in my opinion, it's right there on the ragged edge of being a viable lawsuit. That's not to say I don't agree with the filing of the lawsuit. And certainly, I'm really sympathetic to Gabby's parents. And I am definitely not sorry in any way for Bryan's parents having to defend it, because Laundrie's parents' actions toward Gabby's family, they were unnecessarily callous and cruel and deceptive. It's just really wrong. Well, the civil case is ongoing, and they just had a hearing this week on a discovery fight. That issue was the turning over of a letter by Bryan's mom to him. Her desire not to turn it over seemed to me mostly to be, hey, people will think this sounds really bad. And also, I'm telling you, I wrote it before the murder, so it doesn't have anything to do with it. That's not going to work out. Not really good reasons not to turn it over. Discovery is supposed to be a wide-ranging process. It's not about just admissible evidence. It's really only limited, for the most part, to topics that might even lead to relevant admissible evidence. It's a broader universe, a lot broader. Certainly, Gabby's parents don't have to take the word of Bryan's parents about when she wrote this letter, or that, hey, just don't pay any attention to it. She says, look, it's just the sort of things moms write to sons, right? Well, if that's true, there should be no issue with it. Well, let's take a look at a bit of it, though. It says on it, burn after reading. Yeah, that's either hilarious or ominous, right? When your son ends up being found out to be a murderer of a young woman, it goes from hilarious more toward the ominous side. But let's peer into the language. You are my boy. Nothing can make me stop loving you. Nothing will or ever could divide us. Okay? No matter what we do or where we go or what we say, we'll always have each other. Well, that sounds good. That's a loving mother's message there, certainly. I mean, what's even the problem here? Let's continue on. If you're in jail, I will bake a cake with a file in it. If you need to dispose of a body, I'll show up with a shovel and garbage bags. Remember, love is a verb, not a noun. It's not words, it's actions. Now, I never got a letter from my mom about body disposal and cakes with files in them. And I also didn't murder anybody either. So it just worked out great for me, I guess, but it leaves me without personal experience in this situation. So maybe it's just me. Maybe that's the norm. Whether you murder somebody or don't, you get letters from your mom about burn this letter and I'll dispose of a body for you and help bust you out of jail. Okay. I mean, yeah. Certainly if it is normal, the mother can explain it in a deposition, or if it comes up at trial, she can explain it there too. It can and should be viewed in context with any other evidence the Petitos have to show that it did relate to Gabby, but also the Laundrie's evidence or testimony to say that it didn't. And the judge can decide whether it's admissible or not later. As I'm sure you know, Bryan was found dead from a gunshot wound with his own diary/letter that sought to explain his actions and his hope to relieve his family from further burden. I can't say I'm sorry he's gone, and I can't say I believe his self-serving story either. He was a liar in life. He lied about what happened to Gabby from the time he murdered her until the time he died. All right, well, let's travel just slightly back up north to Georgia. The case that just concluded, the Richard Merritt case. I was commenting on that during the busted live stream on Darrell Brooks. This is the lawyer who was stealing a bunch of money from his clients. Kind of a Murdaugh scenario there. And ended up murdering his mother after he was busted and was about to go to jail. Yes, it is kind of like Murdaugh, isn't it? Except he was killing his wife and his child. But anyway, this dude kills his mother with a knife and a dumbbell. So bad luck for lawyers, generally speaking. I can't give them legal advice, but if I just could give them advice, it would be stop murdering people and stop stealing people's stuff. Just stop. All right. So the judge had given him some time to get his affairs in order, and he was on his last day, and his mom was cooking him a last meal. And that's when he murdered her. He then stole her car, fled the state, went to Tennessee, cut his GPS monitor off, on the way, and created a new identity, Mick Malvo. And he got away with it for quite a while until his car was towed one day, and that led to his being caught because it was his mom's car he'd stolen. He had a stolen plate on it and all of that. So at trial, he tried one of the dumbest stories I've ever heard, and poorly told at that. This guy could never have made a dime at poker. He can't lie or bluff at all. I'm surprised he was able to steal money from people. So his story was that two dudes came to his mom's house, knocked on the door. He opens the door and they got handguns, and he has to let them in. And then at gunpoint, they take his mother, push her down the stairs, and beat her with a dumbbell and stab her with a knife. Now, they don't do anything to him, though. You know, why would they? It's this 77-year-old woman who's obviously the threat to these two gang people or whatever they allegedly. Were they tiny ninjas? Not in this case. One of them actually was athletic and slim, and the other one pudgy. So it was, you know, maybe like a Saturday Night Live pairing or something like that. One way and one the other way, but not two tiny ninjas. Okay, this is serious business here. So they don't murder him. They don't hurt him. But they go much further than the tiny ninjas did in the Alex Murdaugh case. He says they pulled out a phone and showed him pictures of his wife and children at different places. They've been surveilled, and said, if you say anything about us taking your mother out, they'll be next. And why, if they were that worried about it, they just didn't kill him on the spot, then they wouldn't have to worry about anybody saying anything, and they would never have to track his wife and kids down again. Instead, they create this complex scenario where they allow him to go away as a witness, always having the threat over him that if they find out he says anything, that he'll kill their wife and children. I don't know. You can't make these dumb stories make any sense, but let's stay with it. Okay. Let's stick with this. So this rattles him so much, he says, that he packs up some toiletries, and out of his deep concern for his family, he flees to Tennessee. He does it with his mother's car, he says, because she has a bigger gas tank and some more gas in it. He doesn't report to jail that day as he was due, he says, because merely being near law enforcement might make the two guys think he's talking and trigger them to kill his family. Okay, so that's why he had to run away and assume Mick Malvo identity and start a new life. He's so concerned for his family that he never calls the police. He never contacts his family or his friends, never reports to jail, never tells anyone in Tennessee, including the woman he moves in with and has a relationship with, who he really was or what was going on. How touching that he would give up so much just to make sure these two guys never have any thought that he would say something about them killing his mother. He would sacrifice anything to make sure they know that he wasn't talking. Okay, but when his car got towed and he goes to trial for murder and it's his butt going to jail, what does he do? He starts telling the story about the two guys and how they killed his mom, even though he said if he said that they would then kill his family. So now he's totally ready to sacrifice his family as long as it could possibly keep him out of jail. Does that make sense to you? I really, really hope not. Thankfully, nobody on the jury bought any of this at all. And it took 1 hour pretty much for them to go back, figure out how to sit in the room, get a 4-person, look at the forms, take a vote, and get on back in there and find this violent nerd guilty of everything he was accused of. But if you haven't seen the clip of him telling this story, it's worth watching just to see how bad someone could be at lying. And again, attorneys out there, stop stealing, stop murdering. It's really a bad look. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks. Bye.